What's the difference between your true self and your false self? Welcome to the channel. My name is Kim Marie. I am a transformational life and leadership coach, supporting women to step into the fullness of who they are and the life that they know is possible for them. A question I get all the time in my coaching and mentoring work is, how do I know my true self from what is not my true self, right? How do I understand the difference, all right? I am going to start this whole video by saying I don't have all the answers, but we're going to dive in and explore. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe, click the notification bell, hit like, make some sharing opportunities, let women everywhere know about this work, because everything I do here is about supporting all of us to live more empowered. I'd love to hear in the comments, if you're willing to share, even now, right here at the beginning, what is it that you struggle with when it comes to recognizing your true self? What are the nuances? Do you notice your true self? Have you found some differences between the false self and the true self? What have you noticed, and what's the struggle? Share it in the comments. I'd love to hear the things you're struggling with, and let's see if what I'll share here today is helpful to that. All right, so first of all, your true self follows you. Right? You are the authority. Your inner wisdom is what matters. Your inner guidance is what matters. That is the key to all of it. It follows you. Nobody else is the authority. Nobody else needs to give you permission. Nobody else needs to validate you or accept or agree with you, right? If you find yourself constantly wondering, well, would so-and-so approve, or would this be acceptable in my community? Or, I wonder what so-and-so thinks, and maybe I should ask this opinion and that opinion. A lot of times what we end up doing is actually feeding the small self, the false self, the part of us that goes into self-doubt. Now, this is so easy, and I do it too, and I was really bad at it for years. And you know that saying, misery loves company? When we are stewing in our crap, in our indecision, in our struggle to find our center, what's the first thing we often do, right? We call a friend up and we say, oh, I'm dealing with this. This is so frustrating. I don't know what to do. And pretty soon they're saying the same thing. And now we have this whole back and forth of not really either one of us standing in our truth, kind of validating each other for all the ways in which we don't like having to find our truth. And we're still no more decisive or clear or centered or connected to our truth than we were before the phone call, right? What I highly recommend is, if you notice yourself wanting to get validation or ask outside of yourself, literally practice refraining. This is something that I did. I was guilty. I used to call my mom a lot for years. And we had an unhealthy, codependent kind of relationship where I often felt like I was taking care of her and trying to be there for her, trying to help her, trying to save her, trying to, listen to all of her challenges. And then I kind of did the same thing, trying to, get her to listen to me and feel sorry for me and all of those kinds of things that codependency does. And I do have a codependency playlist, so be sure to check that out to help learn more about that. I'll do more videos on that. If you're curious about it, share in the comments what questions you have about codependency and what you'd love me to talk about in that realm, because I think codependency is one of the biggest reasons many of us suffer in our lives. And codependency definitely is about not being in our true self, right? We're in these unhealthy relationships with others that take us out of our true self, okay? So your true self follows you. It is not asking for the approval of anybody else. It doesn't need the approval of anybody else. Now, that doesn't mean that we might not seek some guidance to help us get on that path, to help us recognize things from another perspective. We can't see what we can't see. So having guidance for the sake of saying, okay, I want to share this with you. Can you tell me any other perspectives that I might not be seeing as I think about making this decision? That's one thing. But if we're saying, what do you think? That's so open-ended, and it's so clear we're looking for their approval or their permission on some level instead of simply seeking other perspectives, right? Other perspectives can help us, but when we're trying to get permission, when we're following somebody else, when we're thinking we have to do it the way other people would find acceptable, we're probably steering away from our true self. The other thing about our true self versus our false self is that our true self is quiet. It's often a little whisper, like, I wonder this, or I wonder that. Whereas the false self is usually saying, oh, you can't do that, or what are you thinking there? Oh, that's like this inner critic that is constantly telling us we're not enough, constantly having us doubt ourselves, question ourselves, sabotage ourselves, all of those things, those habits and patterns that we have that we're stuck in from the past. And somewhere over here in the corners, the true self just kind of waiting for us to listen, waiting for us to get still, waiting for us to get quiet enough to hear it, right? Because we can quiet. That's the magic of being human. We can quiet those voices, right? Those loud, false self voices criticizing us, sabotaging us. We can still our minds and get more peaceful, contemplate, reflect, meditate, journal, breathe, get present, be with nature, all the holistic things I talk about doing to get quiet enough to hear that quiet, soft voice of the true self, all right? And then we have to trust it, right? And that's a whole other video on how to trust the true self. The truly empowered self is the true self. Right? The true self knows its power. It knows it doesn't need someone else's approval. It feels a sense of empowerment. It's not getting caught in one extreme or another. It has this very balanced, harmonious, middle way kind of perspective. And by the way, that is a free gift that I have for you, my balance and empowerment cards. If you have not received those yet or downloaded those yet, be sure to do that. They're incredible. They're such a powerful tool for taking a look at 12 balance points of empowerment. And those balance points of empowerment are a place that the true self knows well. And when you're not sitting in those points of empowerment, you're usually sitting in one extreme or another of false power and false powerlessness, and that is not your true self. That is the false self, okay? So those cards will be a super powerful tool for you, so I hope you'll download those, all right? The true self is also not posturing or collapsing, right? It's not more full of itself or believing it's less than, right? And giving up. I always love to say that my favorite definition of humility is to be everything you are and nothing you are not. So the true self is humble in that definition. It's not trying to be anything it's not, which is usually associated with that concept of false power or false powerlessness, right? Where it's kind of trying to be more powerful than it is and align with people in power to be something it's not. And it's also not collapsing under this space of I'm not enough, I'll never measure up, I'll never be good enough, nobody wants me, nobody loves me. It's not collapsing under that space. It's not posturing or collapsing. It's everything you are and nothing you are not on either side of that spectrum, okay? That's the true self. So if you find yourself in those extremes, and use the balance empowerment and empowerment cards to take a look at that, if you find yourself in those extremes, that's also a sign. If you find yourself posturing to try to save face or put on a certain face, or if you find yourself collapsing and not wanting to get out of bed, then you're probably not in your true self. Your false self is ruling the show, and you want to show up as the leading character in your own life, right? The other piece about the true self is it believes in itself. It believes in the true, beautiful, wonderful you that you are, right? The false self is constantly doubting yourself. It's constantly doubting your thoughts, your ideas, your dreams, your capacities, your skills, anything. It will doubt, it will nag at you, it will try to cut you down and make you question everything. All right? It will make you question being in that space of middle, the balance point of empowerment. It will make excuses for reasons you can't do something or shouldn't do something, right? It will constantly find ways to push you down and make you not go to that place. It'll try to make you believe in it. So there's the small self with a little s, that's your false self. That's the false self that's constantly full of all that stuff, that noise in your head. And then there's the self with the capital S, your true self, your higher self, your true nature, your essence, whatever you want to call it, right? And it's this aspect of this dynamic being that's constantly evolving and constantly growing, and it believes in itself. It knows itself. So the minute you find yourself in this space of doubting and criticizing and judging, chances are you are not in your true self. Now, that's not to say your true self won't question. If your true self, if you find yourself questioning, like, let me do some research here, let me find out the pros and cons of something, let me look at some options, let me talk to some other people to learn other perspectives, then your true self might very well be saying, okay, do the research. Look at things before making a decision. There may be this aspect of, okay, something in me knows that I need to look from more perspectives here to get a full picture. The true self wants to see the full picture, right? If I look at a center point on a circle from 12 different vantage points around the circle, that thing in the center is going to look different no matter where I'm looking at it from, right? And so the true self is very interested in those perspectives. It's very interested in the holistic truth of the matter. So questioning or researching or exploring, that is not the same as judgment, criticism, doubting, putting down, all of those kinds of things that the small self is doing, all right? So I hope that those points help you to explore and play with the true self versus the false self. This idea that your true self is following you and no other authority. It tends to have a quiet voice. It is truly empowered and believes in its empowerment. There's no posturing, no collapsing. It believes in itself, right? It is not judging and criticizing. I hope this is super helpful. I hope you'll download the Balance and Empowerment cards. Let me know, what have you noticed about your own true self? How does it speak to you? How do you know if you're in your true self? And what questions do you have for me? What other topics, what other ideas around this would you like me to talk about? I love hearing the ideas. You inspire me every day, and it helps me to keep the channel moving forward with things that you absolutely value and would love to hear about. So I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't, share this with others, click the notification bell, all that good stuff, so that this channel can grow and more women will feel truly empowered. Until next time.